I'm gonna if I butcher your introduction, Tom, because I'm a professional. I try to do a bit of research,
Yeah, hey,
scour Instagram, watch your YouTube.
go for
Which,
it.
to be fair, even you've told me stuff, right, that you've done before. But when I was scouring through and watching, I was like, oh damn! I was like, he's done this, he's done this.
Ah,
Even though like you mentioned about seeing it's a whole different thing. So that's
class.
another reason. I mean, besides the fact that we're friends, and also
Yeah,
the fact that you've done all these things, and the whole of Stories a Stage platform is to talk about the arts in so many different
yeah,
ways, and also like different perspectives that usually maybe are not heard, but ultimately
yeah.
in like a celebration and a positive of it. But I admire you so much because you've done so many things that students that we work with, etc., would like kind of bite the arm off someone, so to speak, to do.
Yeah.
But you're still so humble, man, and you have such a wonderful perspective. And I love the conversations we had. So I was like, you know what, this would actually be so cool to share because I think not I mean more from what you say, because obviously the perspective you come at it from is
Yeah.
more important, I think, in some ways for some people to hear because you've done it and you're
Yeah.
here speaking about it. So I'm gonna do an intro, but you tell me because I might butcher it, so I'm gonna try my
Sure
best.
you won't. I'm sure you
So
won't. You'll be fine.
Tom Hire like fire. I love that, by the way, on the Instagram. So I'm gonna just rattle off your accomplishments or what you've done. So GSA graduate, yeah,
Correct.
and then we were Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Right.
We were Chris in Miss Saigon.
Mhm.
We did Footloose, and you had a wonderful, which I only saw more recently, appearance on I Can See Your Voice on BBC, which in your singing in your football gear, which I loved.
That's right. Yeah.
And of course now you're also a singing teacher as well for GSA and Itali Conti, and obviously for various other clients.
Yeah.
Miss anything, or did I
No,
butcher
I
anything?
don't think you did. I think that kind of sums me up. I think, if you need the kind of headlines, I think that is kind of me. So smashed it basically.
And also semi-professional football player until 16 years old.
That is true. That is true. That's kind of
I didn't
like
actually know that.
it's my alternative reality, like
Yeah.
Back to the Future where they change the reality. Like it's kind of like sometimes I think, what would have happened if I'd actually got that contract at 16 or 17 and just my completely different life would have just, gone over
Taking
here.
another the fact that you had that opportunity kind of like amazed me. Like the fact that you legitimately could have gone down that path as opposed to this
Yeah.
path. So that
Yeah.
was kind of leads me to the first question I had for you. Like, what drew you to performing or singing? Because you said you were singing, I think on I Can See Your Voice. You said you were like singing from like 3 years old.
Yeah.
So like, what initially drew you, and then like when you kind of got into it, what was like that real?
Yeah.
Like, what's the thing that kept you?
Yeah. It's a
And you're
great
like, this,
question.
I've got to do this.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think if I'm honest, it was my brother and my parents first of all. So like I saw my older brother is 3 years older than me. And I saw him singing. So I think that was just, before I could even talk, he was singing. So like it was obviously something that didn't feel weird to me.
Yeah.
Also, my family was quite musical. My grandpa was a musician. My parents not professionally musicians, but they could definitely hold the tune and harmonize. And I know they're Welsh and all that, but so I guess music was just very much a natural thing for me to hear and see and do from, two or three. And then from there were some really influential teachers that I had in nursery who honestly encouraged everyone to perform, whether that was doing a poem, singing, doing an acting bit or singing in a choir. So I was really lucky in that sense that home life, music and singing and performing was just kind of natural. And then in school was the same, which I think is quite a weird thing and an unnatural thing to have. I don't think many people have that. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I'm wrong there, but certainly for me, like, singing in front of people, even like a school concert from the age of, I don't know, 5, 6 upwards it wasn't even a thing. It didn't phase me, which on reflection is mad because as soon as I became like into teenagers and stuff, you become really aware. You're like, oh my God, hang on. Do I know my words? Like, do I know what I'm singing? I don't
Yeah.
know, but until that point, yeah, it was just for whatever reason, I think parents and I think teachers you know, it was just normal. It was normal for me to just learn something and sing it in front of people. And I think that's what got me in, if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely does. And it's funny you say that, because I think I would say, you know, when you said, if is that normal, like having that the school be so kind of for it and encourage it, I don't think that is. If maybe from
Yeah.
my vantage point, not every school at least, because I
Oh,
think some people don't see the merits of the art. But you talked about like confidence and you not being aware of like, oh, I just did it and I just did it. And also because you performed for the Queen. I don't know how old you were, but you did it
yeah.
at your school, right?
Yeah. I did.
And
Yeah.
like,
Well
but
done.
people, yeah, professional, man.
Yeah.
But people don't do that. Like, people don't do that confidently,
I
potentially, like
know.
at such a young age, if they were told to do that. But because
Yeah.
you had this, and that's another thing about the arts, is the confidence it instills. If when you do it from such a young age, it
Yeah.
becomes natural in some things which a lot of people don't possess.
Yeah. And absolutely. And I'll be honest, like, there's footage of me singing in school choirs and concerts and stuff from the age of 6, 7, 8. I'm tiny, and I watch it and I go, I actually can't believe I'm doing that. Like, I can't believe that that's me. And I know whenever we watch our like, young self, it's kind of
Yeah,
a weird thing anyway, because you can't really remember it. But often, like, even when I was training to be an actor, and even in the last kind of 6 or 7 years, like, we all struggle with confidence sometimes. And sometimes I have to go like back to what it was like when I was 10, 11, and be like, I was so fearless then. I would just try everything. I wouldn't think I couldn't do it. I would just they give it to me, I'd learn it, and I'd sing in front of hundreds of people, and I wouldn't even bat an eyelid. And
yeah,
there's something amazing about that. And I think that is something that confidence, and I guess, yeah, how comfortable you are in your own self, and how happy you are to just portray that in front of people is a thing that we try and teach in drama
yeah,
schools. But I think, back to your question, I think, yeah, it was something that just was normal. And I do think it mainly is to my parents, because whilst they were very good at music, they were like, we're gonna give our children that opportunity. Like, we're gonna push them in like the best way, and they're just gonna go and do it. And I
yeah,
think that was the kind of instigator for me.
yeah. Fair. I mean, and one of the things that, because you said, we pushed out on students, and I think it comes
Yeah.
from all different directions. And you've now obviously gone into the industry, you've done so much. I listed off all the accolades there. And then, you're still obviously in the thick of it. And we've talked about this in like outside of, doing this, but like as far as like the busyness of life and having to juggle X, Y, Z. But do you have to sometimes remind yourself, like, people talk about like gratitude and all that kind of stuff, which is very real, but do you have to remind yourself of like that past of like why you love this, why you do this, to like be like,
Yeah.
no, I get to do this thing, and that's like,
Yeah.
that's, have to refresh your mind, refresh your memory, so to speak, to then remind
Yeah.
yourself that you're lucky to do this.
Yeah, I think so. And I think certainly in the early years, like after I graduated and I started to do some of those jobs, and some of those jobs were like bucket list, like
Hmm.
I part of me couldn't believe that I was doing it. And then it almost felt like, in order for my parents and family to come and see me do that, was kind of like a thank you, without being direct, like a very indirect thank you, because everything I do, I know I just couldn't have done without my parents. I know everyone can say that, and in their own wonderful ways. But for me and my brother, like, that is honestly, genuinely why we're where we are. Because if they
Hmm.
didn't go, they're going to go and do this, then we literally wouldn't have. And we would have just stayed where we were. And I'm sure we would have had a lovely kind of life, but we just wouldn't have gone on to achieve what we've both done. So yeah, I think that gratitude and that remindfulness of why I do what I do is just totally instilled in me, and was before I even realized it. I guess the reason why I wanted to achieve was to give that thank you back to them. Do you know what I mean? So, like,
Yeah,
the reason I worked so hard to be an actor and to try and get those jobs, and then in the jobs do such a good job, was because I wanted to make them proud, and I wanted to thank them for that, all that effort that they did. Obviously for me as well, but I think honestly, like, certainly those first few jobs, like Joseph Miss Saigon and that, like, it's just such a whirlwind. I was so young, I was, 21 and to 25 doing them, and you're just in the bubble, and you're just churning it out and you're doing it. I'm much more like aware now and present, like that of where my head is at and why I do things. And I think, yeah, we'll talk about this, I'm sure, but like as an actor, you evolve as well. So you grow up obviously in age, but you also grow as an actor and a person. I think like I'm a different person now as I was when I was 21. And priorities change and stuff. But I think that gratitude of being thankful for why you got into it is absolutely key, because you've got to enjoy it, haven't you? Like,
Yeah.
this is the art, as you said, and it's an amazing thing. It's the best job in the world to be able to go out there, sing, dance, or act. Not so much dancing for me, but you know what I mean. And take that bow to 100 or 1,000 or 2,500 people and them applaud you. Like, that is unbelievable, and that is an amazing thing to cherish. And I think that's the easy point to go, oh, that's why I do this. But I think it's really important to have, yeah, as you said, like reflect on actually how did I end up here? And for me, yeah, that's upbringing, parents, family, support, infrastructure that I know I'm just so grateful for. So yeah, I'm honestly thinking about that every day, I reckon, even now.
And I love that, man. And that's another. I mean, I saw another reason I love talking to you in general. So we have these kind of conversations, and but that
Yeah,
mentality is we all get lost, right? We all get lost, but to reflect, and try to have that reminder, like, damn, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it. It's awesome, and
yeah,
that story is really cool, man. I respect that a lot.
yeah. Thanks.
I mean, you went and you mentioned Joseph, right? And I think that was your first job. I think you told me that was the first job you
Yeah,
after graduating.
yeah. I mean, it was my first show. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd started working as an actor when I was still in third year, but that was my first like musical theatre show.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so it was the first one, and I remember getting that call, and yeah, it was like it's the first kind of sense of gratification where you go, oh my God, like I'm actually in it. Like
Yeah.
not just trained, but I've auditioned and they've picked me. Like
Yeah.
that, I think everyone needs that. Well, we can certainly strive to get that first yes, that first professional yes, I think is massive,
Hmm.
because it kind of says yes to everything else.
Yeah, no, and I get you. And I mean, I think you got that fairly not too long after you graduated, right? I think, and going into that, so you went from like graduating and not too long after you're in touring with Joseph, and you're in
Yeah,
the thick of it and doing what you wanted.
yeah.
What did you learn doing that, like on the job, that you couldn't like no drama school could teach? Not because they're not going to drama school, just because
Yeah,
certain things you can't teach until you do it, right?
yeah. I so much. I learned so much about myself and me as a performer. I think, uh, long story short, I'd done Joseph as an Amdram, actually as a school production, and I played Joseph in school. Like most people have, I think,
Yeah.
So I knew the show inside out. I didn't need rehearsal. I even knew the part. Like I literally, I could have recited it before I even
Hmm.
started. But I guess what I learned was professionalism, because I was working with people who were a lot older than me, who'd been around the block. They'd done loads of shows, and I think it was a sense of adjusting my ability to be able to be professional 8 shows a week. And I think that's the main thing I learned, is that yeah, I can do it, and so can they. But like, how do I do that 8 shows a week for a year? Because that's a different beast. And until you do it, I don't think you can train that really. I mean, drama
Yeah.
school is obviously geared towards all of the skills that you need, but it's kind of like training to do a marathon, until you run a marathon. And I'm not speaking from experience, but until you run the marathon, there's only so much really kind of trying it out you can do. You can do a 10K, you can do a 50K, you can maybe try half, and then you can run a marathon. And that's really the only indicator whether you can do it. And then maybe you'll do another marathon after that. But I think that's the main thing I learned: professionalism and learning from others on and off the stage, how they carry themselves, how they interact with the company, how they interact with their agents, how they manage their work-life balance,
Mhm.
less about the craft. I was confident with my craft. I knew that, and I knew the show, so it was very familiar. It was more about, yeah, what I learned as an actor, you know, how I picked up things there that I could then take to the next audition or to the next job. Um, yeah, I think that's the main thing.
Right. And it kind of goes, I think, to a lot of ways when we try to like in many different ways. Well, I think a lot of times when you're teaching, you try to say to the students, don't almost like take for granted what appear to be the little things, because it seems to be in some respect the little things that you picked up on the job.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I think again on reflection is like I actually learned a bit of self-confidence there as well. I think I actually came out of drama school less confident than I did going in.
Oh,
And that's interesting, I think,
yeah.
because you know, I don't really know why that was. I had a great time at GSA. I really enjoyed it. I had a fantastic time. But if I'm being honest, I think I could have been pushed more. I think
Mhm.
that's maybe why I'm quite a pushy teacher, maybe, in a good way,
Yeah.
because because I wasn't and I wasn't challenged that much. Like I was a good singer coming in, so I was just kind of like labeled as the good singer. No one really tried to make me better, to be honest. And I feel like if I'd had the right kind of coach or person, I could have really kind of like honed my craft. So I think when I got into Joseph, I learned that, yeah, I can do this. I'm good at this, but there's also like a world more that I can evolve to. I can be even better than this because there's people in this cast who are better than me at this or that, or whether it's dancing or, singing high or singing in a certain way. There was things that I realized I couldn't do. And I was like, so I don't know everything yet. I like,
Yeah.
here I thought, here's my first professional job, I'm done. Actually I was like, no, like there's quite a lot to learn. So I guess I learned to trust myself, self-confidence in the little things, but I also like, learned, oh my God, there's so much more to learn, from
Yeah.
a craft point of view, I guess.
Yeah. Because when you're on the job, and we students are told this all the time, like, director's not gonna, maybe treat you or as kindly or as be as like they're there to do a job and they're going to be more maybe
Yeah.
upfront and to the point. So because they're just there to make a great show, which is not always a negative thing. But so I guess in that context, they didn't know that, oh, here's Tom the good singer, so to speak, or that label, it doesn't carry over. So when they
Oh,
were like, I'm assuming just they were telling you, hey Tom, that's not, you got to do this, you got to do this. So they're challenging you. Did you take to that quite well because you weren't maybe challenged before?
yeah, I think yes and no, actually. Um, I was still labeled as a good singer, but
Hmm.
so was everybody else, right? Because everyone, in a job, everyone's good really in musical theatre. Uh, I actually think I didn't respond very well in the early stages to direction, to being challenged because I don't think I was ready for it. I don't think I'd been trained for that. I'd spent 3 years where most of the time I got up and sung in front of people, it would be well done, that was great. Maybe think about this and that, but it wasn't like you really need to work on that. Like that kind of wasn't good enough.
Hmm.
But when I kind of had notes that exposed the things that I wasn't very good at, which I knew inside, but I hadn't been trained to do, I found
Yeah.
that hard actually. And I think that's probably the start of why I then started to realize, yeah, I mean, it's amazing I'm in this job. I'm really grateful, but actually, I'm actually not good enough. Like I'm actually like bluffing this a little bit. Like I need to
Yeah.
like get better at that. And I think that comes, I guess, yeah, self-awareness, and then that, the what do I say? Like it's like the continuous journey of self-improvement. That's what you
Hmm.
embark on doing as an actor. Like you're never done in
Yeah.
some ways, which can be quite daunting for someone coming out of drama school. But I think if you flip that on his head, it's also fun and good because then each year or each month or each term, hopefully you can look back and be like, I'm better than I was. I'm better at that than I was, and maybe,
Yeah.
I'm not as good as that anymore because I can't sit in the splits anymore. Not that I ever could, but some things might shift, but you know, that's what you embark on doing. When you get a new role, you get a new script, or you get something brand new, it hasn't been done before. You have to improvise and you have to improve it. You have to improve what you do and try and keep it fresh. So yeah, I got off on a tangent there,
That's
but
fine.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get, no, I get you, and no, I 100% agree with you. In looking back, I mean, we're doing a lot of reflection here, but looking back, is there any? Because, like I told you earlier, you've told me, like in conversation, you've always said that I did this, I did this, so I was aware, but like seeing it and doing and watching it was a different story, and I was like, damn, Tom did all this, and but like upon like when you reflect back, do you look at anything and you're like, holy crap, like, oh, I did that. Like, is there any like, one particular thing or maybe multiple things you're just like, damn, I actually did that?
Yeah, I think some more than others. I think naturally. There's a couple that I'm really proud that I did that. Joseph is one.
Mhm.
Miss Saigon is the other. Mainly Miss Saigon because genuinely I just thought I was never going to be in that show because I thought I could be.
Yeah.
I actually remember seeing that first production like in 2010. So I'd have been 17 at the time. So
Okay.
it would have been like, well, I was maybe younger than that, you know. But I remember seeing it and thinking, that's cool. And then when I was in drama school in second year, it was in the West End. So I thought, perfect. Like next year when I graduate, I'm going to be auditioning for that. I've got a good chance of getting it. And then it closed. It closed when we were in third year. I was like,
Oh,
that's it. I'm never going to be in it because it's such a massive production. I was like, that's never coming back. Like they're not going to bring that back in a year's time, you know? So I thought, that ship sailed. And then a couple of months later, the auditions came out because he was going on tour. And I thought, wow, like an audition and got it. And then, you know, the fact that I got to play Chris as well, honestly, that's a proper bucket list. It felt like, you know, the show, I'm biased, but I think is the best show. I think it's the best musical ever written because it's so cinematic. It's like you're in a war zone. It's like you're in Vietnam. The costumes are sick. The lighting's amazing. The sound, the orchestra, the music, the story. I'm just like, what's wrong with it? Nothing. You know, I love it. And I think the fact that I got to do Chris was one of those moments where I go, that's top of the list. I can't believe I did that. Along with, you know, singing for the Queen is a bit mad. I sometimes I'm mad. I can't believe that I did that. And I look at pictures of that and I'm like, that's me. She's there. And the Duke of Edinburgh was there. I was like, this is nuts. And again, I kind of wish that when I was younger, I was a bit more present.
hmm.
Like he took it in. I'm much better at that now. But I don't really remember going, I need to remember this moment. It was kind of just like one of many, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's massive. So I think if I had to rate them, it'd be Miss Saigon, the Queen, and Joseph.
Fair. But the fact that you can rate those things is awesome
I know,
because
yeah.
you have those on your bucket list.
Yeah.
You talked about earlier, like learning about how to balance, right? Like from people, like from your peers, like learning how to balance.
Yeah.
Because we talked about this a lot, like just like the mental side is just in life in general, the mental side is massive.
Yeah.
But like in this industry, it's a whirlwind. There's so much going on. There's chaos. Like it's you, and then sometimes like there is like you're immersed in the show, but then when that ends, whether it's the end of the night or going home or just the end of a tour, and then now you're just looking
Yeah.
for the next thing.
Yeah.
That's hard. Like that, it's a balance, right?
Yeah.
How did you find balance?
Yeah. I think work in progress, you know, like I don't know anyone who has succeeded with that. I don't think there is a succeeding with it. I think the way I try to frame this is if you're self-employed in general, that is what's the word? Unstable in its normal form. Do you know what I mean? It's generally not as secure as full-time employment, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the point. That's why you choose generally to be self-employed. So you can be more freelancy. You can pick and choose what you do, whatever your profession. So if you're like an electrician, That's fine, because you've learned your trade, you've done it, you've got really good at it, and then you can sell your services and you can be a freelancer in that capacity. So you do a job, you finish one, you do another, and you might have a gap, but you can have some certainty that people are going to need an electrician.
Mhm.
Now, the thing with being an actor is that if it goes in that model of being self-employed, freelance, but the prospects of jobs is so much less and it's much more oversubscribed. So the ratio of like person to job is much less. So yeah, work in progress. Like I learned that the hard way, I think. I wasn't warned about that. You know, I wasn't really told about this is how much money you're going to earn on a good job. This is how much money you're going to earn on a bad job. This is how much money average people earn in a show. And this is how much your rent's going to cost if you live in the southeast, and your bills and your travel, and this is how much your tax is going to cost, and your accountant. And I didn't get any of that. I had to learn that as we went through. And I'll be honest, that was really hard. And I think it was mainly hard because I don't have a circumstances of my family where they can go, it's all right, we'll just pay for it. And I'm not saying people have that. I know people who do, and I think that does make a difference. As I said, my parents gave us everything they had, and that's why we're where we are. But that's different to them being 21 and being like, I can't afford my rent, can you pay for it? Like, I knew that was never ever going to be a thing that I was ever going to even think about asking, let alone asking for it. And if I did, the answer would have been no, right? So I think that is the background for then why that was hard for me is when you come out of a job and you go from paycheck to paycheck to no paycheck, and then you're like, what am I meant to do now? That's really hard, because I had to just find different jobs. And I think, in the early stages, my God, I did loads of different jobs. And the reason I did that is because you have to pay the bills. And if I didn't earn the money, you can't pay the bills. And I think that is really hard for new graduates and young performers. And I don't know how to make it easier. I think if there was something, it is to find something you love aside or in addition to your performing. And that can be anything, it can be a sports instructor, a football coach, or it could be a spin instructor, like a yoga thing, or something that you actually get out of and that you can balance across with your performing. Because I think then if you are in the scenario of, which I think most people fall into, is that they don't have parents who can just pay for their lifestyle, then it means it takes off the stress and actually allows you to be able to focus on your craft, which is the most important thing. So then you do a bit of yoga, pays your bills, or at least contributes to, and then go and get yourself a singing lesson, or allow 3 hours in the evening to practice your monologues so you can go and smash the next audition and then get that job. But I think it's really hard. And I think when did I graduate? 2015. So I've been out 8 years now, and progressively every year I'm like evolving that. I'm trying to get better at that, trying to get a better balance and understanding. But I think if I'd had more, as I said, those things that I just wasn't told about, if someone had told me that for real, I think I might have been able to manage that a little bit better. Maybe I would have found something, even if it was something that I'm not doing now. Like, obviously I'm coaching alongside acting now, but even if it was just something else, I don't know, like do an accounting course or something, I don't know. But I think that's important, because unfortunately you do kind of need to be in the southeast to be able to do this. Most auditions are in London. So therefore, sure, you can live in Cardiff or Manchester, you can, but the train is going to be like 80 quid a pop. So you need to be able to have that in order to be able to do it. Otherwise it's just going to be stressful. So, I wasn't taught about with money. And I think maybe that should be a thing to help that transition, certainly in the early ages. But yeah, it's hard, and it does get easier, I think, once you work it out for you.
Trial by fire, right? You learn and by doing in a lot of ways. Like we said earlier.
Yeah, and that's me, but I know people who don't think that way at all. And I think it depends on what you want. I knew that I wanted to have a house. I knew that. And I knew that my acting would help me get there, but I knew that I would have to have other stuff going on to be able to prove to the banks basically that they can lend you any money at all.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think it depends on where you're at and what you want.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you said that, but I mean, you're lucky enough that you've been able to, you have found that second thing, which is teaching, right?
Right.
And then obviously it's still in the mold of, it's different because obviously you're teaching singing, but it's
Yeah.
still in that mold, right? Which is quite fortunate.
Yeah.
What kind of joy and fulfillment do you get from that? Because I know it's an extra thing, but at the same time, I know you do generally like it as well.
Yeah.
There's a certain fulfillment. Like obviously, I don't teach singing, but that I can speak from teaching is there's a certain fulfillment you can get from that. That's almost kind of unparalleled in a way.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the reason why I kind of fell into it, really. I fell into teaching, and it started by me just some people asking me to coach their sons or daughters on their drama school applications. You know, it must have been 2021 at the time, just graduated. And at the time I was thinking, like, what do I know? You know, why are they asking me to help? I guess the only thing relevant is that I had done it, so I could help them through it.
Hmm.
And I just remember doing some of those sessions and just not thinking that I was working. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just kind of just get into a room, help them out as much as I can, and then the 45 minutes or an hour would have just passed. I'm like, I didn't feel like I was working it. I wasn't hard work for me, and I've been paid a little bit as well for it.
Hmm.
Not that I was just doing it for the money at that point or anything, but I was doing it, because I was helping this person. And I think, I think that's the start of it, and that hasn't left. I genuinely still feel now, even the drama schools like GSA and Talia Conti, like I walk into that room with student X and I don't feel like I'm working. I don't feel like I'm like, oh God, here we go again. Like it's so dynamic. And I think especially in the arts, like teaching is no lesson is the same, no student is the same, no voice is the same. And particularly in like technical singing, which I do teach, as well as like audition tech and master classes and stuff. Every voice is different. So I have the same tools and kind of training to try and help you, but how I help you will be different to how I help the next person with maybe the same issue, because they might approach it differently. So nothing's repetitive. It's not like I'm just reading from a book. It's very like interactive. And I think that's why I think I enjoy it. And obviously then the results, there's some people I used to teach, like some of those people I'm remembering there right in the beginning, who I was just kind of helping a family friend to get into drama school. Like some of those now have, they were 13, 14 at the time, coached them on and off for 3 or 4 years. They're now finishing drama school because they got in, and now they're auditioning for agents. And I'm still helping them. So I've been helping them for like 6 or 7 years, So that's massive as well. And that also reminds me of how old I am. But
you and me both.
I think that's part of the enjoyment I get, for sure. That I feel like I can help. And I also enjoy, as you can tell, enjoy chatting. And I think a lot of that is chatting, and a lot of teaching, certainly in performing arts, it's skill-based, but it's also psychology and confidence and getting them to be able to do it in that scenario, rather than just, reading from a book and being able to do technique X. Like they need to be able to do it under pressure. And I think, rapport, confidence, communication, all of that comes into it. And I think that's why I enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't teach singing, but I think with you 100%, the rapport and almost coming at it from a different perspective, because the mental side is just as important sometimes, if not more, than the technique aspect of certain things.
Yeah.
Do you find like when certain joy or fulfillment or seeing them succeed or finally overcoming a hurdle, can that compare to like the thrill of performing for you?
Good question. Oh, I don't know. I think that's a really good question. I think that shifts depending on where I've been in my life. I don't know. How does that compare? I think it's probably equally as good. Like when students get that breakthrough, or you see them do something that you knew they could do, but they didn't know they could do, and it's taken, I don't know, 2 years to do it, and you see them do that. I think that's equally as good as, taking that bow as Chris and Miss Saigon, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. In a different way. It's almost like
Yeah.
I guess me taking the bow is like what my parents are watching me think. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's kind of
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the other side. And I enjoy that. It's kind of like not parental, but
A little bit though. It is
pastoral,
because sometimes you see that like in them when they see you that you see that they've done it. There is a
Yeah.
little, and it's sometimes it is a little bit parental. Like I think you can't ignore that. Like, but it's nice
Yeah.
in a good way. Like,
Yeah, and it's like that pastoral care kind of side, isn't it? Like
mm,
you then know, like deep down, that actually you've had a massive impact on them, because they
mm,
know in your heart they couldn't have done that without you. And they might or may not say that, but you
yeah,
know it. I
yeah,
think that's really powerful,
yeah,
because again, with the teaching side, like I fell into teaching, like I never embarked on being a teacher, at all, to be honest. When I fell into it, I was like, I know nothing. Like, I'm not a teacher, I'm an actor. But then over the years, I'm like, that's fine though. Like, I don't need to become like a teacher. I don't need to read like thousands of books just to feel like I belong here. Actually, what I bring is my bit, like what I've done, and that's what makes me my good teacher, as opposed to person who's read 1,000 books. And I
mm,
think that was cool when you start to see those results, when you go, oh yeah, I was actually right there. I was right. Like, I thought they could do it. I tried to make them do it, and then they did it. And
mm,
that's like that's I imagine how like year 3 maths teacher gets when they've been trying to get this kid to do algebra for 2 years, and then they finally get it, and you're like, yes.
yeah. But you can see the beauty of the arts as well is you see it on stage, and I think it's
Sure.
different. Yeah, which is lovely. And going off that a little bit, obviously the teaching side's still kind of relevant here, but what is the biggest piece of advice you would give to someone who wants to be in this industry or is training currently to be in this industry? Because you probably give it as well to students, but
Yeah.
what would you say? What is always kind of your go-to? Like, know this.
I think if I had to say one thing, I would say take care of yourself. And that means professionally and personally.
Mm,
Because I don't know, it might have changed now. And I do feel like it's getting better. Like it's getting much more aware of things and people's feelings and insecurities and good things and all of that. Like it's becoming a much safer, supportive environment to be in. Whereas, it used to be cutthroat, and even before my time, it used to be way more cutthroat
yeah.
and brutally honest in a non-supportive way. I think I see so many students struggle, like, because it is hard. It's not an easy industry, and everybody knows that. And to get into drama school alone is not easy. And then when you're there, it's not easy. And then when you come out, it's not easy either.
Hmm.
So it's like I see a lot of students struggling with that. And I think if I had to say, if I had someone who was amazingly talented, who I often see, and they are 15, 16, or 17, 18, and they are buzzing to go and do it, I think if I had to say one thing, I would say, take care of yourself, because I think that would stick with them. I know they're going to work hard. I know they're going to succeed, probably, because they're really talented. What I don't know they're going to do when they do all that is that they're going to take care of themselves. And I think that's, whether you are playing Alphabet and Wicked, you are tree four at the back of a Netflix film, or you are unemployed and you haven't had a job for 4 years. I think you need to take care. You need to know how to take care of yourself. You need to know how you fit in, what your process is, mental health, family, friends, network. How are you gonna look after yourself? Because I think, again, that was kind of bypassed, when I'm in my training. And I do feel like we've all got a bit better than that. Maybe that's because they got people like me who have done it, who have struggled, and then gone, can we improve this process? I think
Yeah.
that's kind of like trial and error. But yeah, it's a weird one to say, I think, because I think students will go and do it, you know, they will go and do it. They'll succeed or they'll fail, and they'll do that up and down. But often most people don't take care of themselves. And I think
Yeah.
that's the nature of the biz as well, is that it is, you have to just kind of throw everything at it. And often you sacrifice your own kind of well-being for that, because you have to give up everything. And yeah, I think, yeah, taking care of yourself, I think that would be it.
Yeah, no, I think I'm with you there. Obviously, again, I come at it from a different angle slightly. We're in the same building, doing teaching them in different ways, but
Yeah.
I align 100% with that, because if there's anything I preach more than anything, it's probably that. I was finding a way to take care of yourself, because balance is hard, but it's important, as we've
Yeah.
discussed. And
Yeah.
my final question, Tom Hyam, like fire. Um, this question I got because you shared something on Instagram which I loved. I think yesterday is you shared about like success, how you
Yeah.
measure success, because
Yeah.
obviously, so if we come at it from like a student graduate perspective, it's like the
Yeah.
success is I'm in a show.
Yeah.
But then sometimes it's like if I'm not in a show, failure, doom and
Yeah.
gloom. And that goes for everyone in every capacity. But and I'm a big advocate on like you define like your own success, like what is successful to me is doesn't
Yeah.
have to be. So for example, I could do something which was on a very small scale but very fulfilling, and that's success. And like you said, you got a house, which I mean is a great and a big thing, but to some people, like that's not success.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Like so how do you define success?
Yeah. Great question, man. Oh, I don't know. I think it changes. I think it changed for me. And I think, as you said very rightly, like it is different for everyone. I think when I was a student, when I was graduating, success for me was exactly what you said, being in a show, for sure. And not being in one was failing. And I think that was the same for everyone. I
Sure.
don't know whether that's because we weren't taught what success or failure is, and actually how to generate that success, whether that be little things or big things. Like for me, I felt exactly that being in a show was success and not being in a one was failing. And I think that is tricky, but can feel accurate as well. Like if you train to do musical theatre and you're not doing musical theatre, then is that failing? I don't know. That's an open question, I think, for another conversation. So I think that was for the first couple of years. If I wasn't doing acting, I wasn't succeeding. So I think the times where I wasn't acting, which it was often, whilst I was lucky with the jobs and I did kind of work pretty non-stop for the first few years, there's also gaps. Like, for example, in Miss Saigon, I think the timing was I did Joseph and I did Footloose. I finished Footloose in at Christmas time, at the same time as audition for Miss Saigon. And I got the offer for Miss Saigon the Christmas break. So it would have been like late. I think it's the last day of the office. So it must have been like 20th of December. That's when I got the offer. That contract didn't start till April. And it was a year contract from April. And I would say that's
Oh.
pretty standard for big contracts. So whilst it was honestly the best news in the world at that time, like in reality, I had 4 months to wait. And if you want to try and get, as the things I said there, like as a side hustle or something else to earn you money, you try and get a job where you're trying to work and they know you're leaving in 4 months. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't get many of them. Even a coffee shop is going to go like, well, you wanted to work here now and then you want to leave. It's going to take somebody else.
Yeah.
So success failed. So even in that time with those gaps, I felt like I was succeeding because I was going into a big job. But then, I was probably struggling to make ends meet financially during that time because I didn't have any income, or I had very little income, and I was still living in London. We'd moved to London because that was also the thing to do at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So I think that was the early stages. Like success was that for me for sure. I was lucky enough to succeed in that. I think that's when things started to shift for me when, without going into detail, like I was earning good money, I was in a good show, I was enjoying the part, I was enjoying all that, and I was enjoying my personal life outside of the show. It was like, it's amazing. Does it even get any better than this?
Yeah.
And then I remember thinking like, I reminded myself of like what I actually want from life. And like for me, even before I met Alice, and stuff. I just knew that I wanted to have a place of my own, and I don't know why that was. My parents certainly didn't instill that. It was just something that I always wanted. And I remember kind of looking at the numbers when I was in Miss Saigon, like the best job I'd ever had, and I was miles off being able to afford what I thought I would be able to afford, being at near the top of what was possible at my age. Like in one of the biggest shows, covering one of the biggest parts, like money couldn't be much better unless I was playing the lead, right? So I was like, wow, like here I was thinking, if I succeed in my career, I will get what I want outside of life, outside of my career. And at the time, I think I had to just adjust that. And sometimes it happens, you could get a commercial or something or TV that pays you insane amount of money, and then it could shift that balance. But for me personally, where I was, it wasn't enough for what I knew I wanted, which was a shock, I think. I think it was a shock because I mean, obviously everything's got expensive. Maybe if we were doing this 20 years ago, it'd have been fine.
Yeah.
But, where we were, I think that shifted the whole success thing for me, because then I was like, ooh, I'm gonna have to think outside the box here. Because if I want what I want to be successful in my head, in my life, let alone just career, I'm gonna have to do something else. I'm gonna have to, like, in reality, earn more money, really, and have a better balance and more control, so that I don't have to wait 4 months to start a job. I can, afford that thing and keep it afloat so that I could get what I wanted. And a house was a massive driving factor for me. So I think then I really tried to find something else, and I started doing a bit more teaching, coaching. I actually started when I was doing Miss Saigon, actually, online coaching with people who were doing drama school. And I think then success, to where we are now, was a massive thing, trying to get the place of our own and just have a nice, settled, personal life, I think was success for me. And yeah, when we got that, I think that was a bit, it's as good, I think, as, taking that bow as Chris and Miss Saigon. So I think how I measure success now, I don't know. I think it's a hybrid. I think it's a hybrid of all of them. I don't really, if I can just keep doing what I'm doing, I think that's success for me now. Do you know what I mean? I'm really proud of what I've done personally and professionally up until this point. I think if I can keep doing this, then I think that's what the next success is for me. That in another 5 years' time, I'm 35 and I'm still doing this. I think that's what success looks like to me. Very long-winded answer, but hopefully that makes sense.
That makes 100% sense, man. And I love that, and love you, man. Awesome stuff.
Man.
I know, I really appreciate it, man. It was awesome, and I hope you enjoy. I love this, and on a serious note, it sounds a bit like cheesy, but I genuinely think like people hearing this and like certain people who this will hopefully reach and go to is really important. And I think it's like, it's not, and like some of the things we talk about, the challenging stuff it's reality, but it's also good to hear it, and hopefully they can take from that and build from that and learn.
Yeah, I think so. And I think if there was an opportunity for me when I was 14, 15, 16 to hear and look at these resources like we're doing here, like it's just so interesting, right? Because anyone from anywhere can do whatever they want. And sometimes people just need to hear that that's kind of possible and that you can work it out. You can work it out as you go, and you can carve your own journey, even if no one's really done it before. And I think that's great. It's great that we're doing this. I really enjoyed it. I honestly, we could chat all night, really, couldn't we?
Yeah, but obviously we won't, because I know you're gonna be somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll cut you off. But again, cheers, man. I genuinely, seriously,
thanks for having me, and thanks to you for organising this. I think it's a brilliant thing, and I think lots of people are going to get loads of value from it. So thanks for having me.
Before we go, Tom, let me just do this for the gram. Just got to take a picture on.
Yeah.
You pose for me.